Hey class, this is Nick. I got a tutorial today about how to add entourage to your elevations and sections. What I mean by entourage is any kind of element that is like a vector outline or taken from a photograph that adds some context to a drawing, whether that be a hand drawing or a digital drawing. It's not always possible to draw everything and to draw everything, like something that looks like realistic. So you can take a photograph or something from another source, and you can use Photoshop or Illustrator to add that to the drawing. In this case, we have an elevation. You can see the street here, and we know it's a street because we have this kind of street light. We have kind of a garbage can and a bench and like a tree, and so that kind of gives us a sense of maybe where something is. Here we've got some furniture placed in the drawing, and that might give us a sense of how the room is supposed to be used. There's a bed here. There's a man kind of walking up a ladder, in like profile. This gives us a sense of the scale of the room and also a little bit of information about circulation. We have this man walking here, which gives us more kind of scale. People are really the only, elements that can really give us a sense of scale. Chairs might be different sizes, or beds, or things like that. Trees might grow, or it might be, it might look like a bush at one scale and a tree at another scale. So we really want to make sure that we have people, at least one person in like an elevation or in a set of sections. Some kind of warnings though too, like I wouldn't don't get too clever with things. Like I don't really care for this one that much, but it's an example that has a lot of different elements in it. There's a little bit too much going on here. It's a little bit distracting from the drawing. I think the tree is kind of tasteful, and like the maybe the figures, but the like puppy over here is a little bit too much. The way the furniture is kind of placed in here is just kind of piecemeal. I don't know. I would look for things that are kind of flat and things that aren't really distracting from the drawing. Another thing about this drawing is that they post-shade this in white, which doesn't really show up very well, even though there is this kind of background set in it. The background should really be a lot darker. So don't take this as exactly what to do. There are definitely some flaws here. The last thing is like the texture, as I pointed out. So there's this kind of sky field. There's this kind of ground poche, and then the kind of asphalt is actually pocheted here. So texture is another thing you can use to like denote materiality, to again talk about context, and just to kind of give tone to things, so that you can generate contrast between your poche and the sky, or the interior and your poche, or the ground and the project. Okay, I'm going to show you a few examples here just to get you some ideas about this process. But the reason we do this is that sometimes drawings alone can't evoke the right feeling, or you can't quite communicate materiality. So this is a way to kind of pictorially create sort of like phenomenological effects, or like emotional or spiritual kinds of effects in a drawing, just to give it a feeling. So this is the larger kind of drawing, and so now we begin to see it as it's also diagrammatic. Like we have this cut in section. There's an elevator that's kind of attached to a rope, and then there's this kind of underground kind of subway piece. These people waiting for a subway, and so it's almost like a video game kind of rendered in like cross section, but it gives us more of a sense of the narrative of the space and the story about it. Yeah. So again, there's some things that I may not particularly care for here, but at least it does kind of communicate the idea that I'm talking about. I'm not quite sure why there's this banding in the images, if you ask me. It might be because it's several images kind of laid over themselves in order to create that effect. Yeah, I honestly don't know why it's in there, but as another example from a similar kind of student. Once again, I think the poche is very hard to read, but you can see these kinds of guidelines rendered as a white dashed line, and that's kind of interesting. You can see the use of the grass and some trees and things to sort of give it a sense of growth and of being overgrown. The poche is rendered really clearly here. You can definitely tell where the ground line is. Then they've used a photograph in here that is a perspective with this tree in it, and it's not meant to be real. It's meant to evoke a sense about the way that the space feels, again. The way that people are using the space. It's not as clear as I would like it to be. I like the kind of roots in the trees. It's kind of nice. So there's a few things that are really kind of interesting here, but it's not like I'm saying that you should exactly emulate this. This is just an example. All right. So this is an example of LTL architects. This is one of the sections we showed you guys a couple weeks ago, and this is another example of a hand drawing that has had some additional entourage added to it. So you can see the figures that are in the drawing. These are kind of photoshopped with a little bit of transparency, and they show you how the space is used. You've got people using exercise equipment, climbing, doing weights, sitting at the bar. A little bit extra context thrown in is this kind of water. Sorry, no, wait. Okay, so it's water here and kind of a concrete tone here. It's a little bit hard to make out, but just to kind of give it some additional kind of contrast and some additional like materiality, and then some text has been added in a program like Illustrator or Photoshop, just to kind of help us understand the project. There's a little zoom in here, and it just really helps to add life to the building. Another example here. So this is one example where they've used a little bit of tone to show one space that's offset from this kind of sort of like interlocking space, as well as the use of the scale figures again. A couple of like light shafts added just to show kind of the penetration of daylight within the form. And once again, they'll scale people, showing not only the proportions of the building, but also how it's used. You got people in the elevator, you got people kind of waiting, people walking through this tube, and the use of the kind of color here helps us read this form penetrating this section. And again, it's like a hand drawing. You see it's scanned. It's got kind of kind of dirt on it from the drawing process. It's a really kind of analog thing, but then this extra kind of layer of color really helps it pop, helps it read. Example from Diller's videos, proposal for the Highline. And you can see example here of like the section, but the real star here is the plant life and the soil, and this is showing how it works, and like the jogger, on this thing. And this is a really great way to talk about, again, how you want this to feel. Notice the foliage in the foreground here, and then there's a layer that has been faded, and that's to suggest the background, which gives this image, although it's flat, it gives it some depth. So that's a really nice kind of effect there. Another example like that. So using a section to show like a diagram with some materiality. So you've got some water texture, you've got some wood texture, some simple kind of color to like denote planes in space. This is kind of a section perspective, but again, another kind of example. And then the foliage with the soil. You don't always have to do that. This is just this in particular is really trying to show how the system works, and so that's an important detail. Kind of a section perspective with a lot of depth. So taking some site photographs and like a photo montage, and then overlaying this drawing with some people and some materials. And you notice that the people, you'd be really careful with your entourage, right? That they are distorted a bit in order to conform to the perspective, and they are carefully scaled so that we really read them in the size that they're supposed to be. That figures that are in the background or middle ground are smaller, figures that are in the foreground are taller, and that also helps achieve the feeling of three-dimensional depth in the image. Very important. If you get the size and scale of the figure wrong, it can pull you out of the image, and we don't want that. Another LTL, this is a detail of this window washing unit that's converted into a little golf course. So they've taken the drawing, added a photograph of the Seagram building, added some scale figures. This man is smoking a cigar, this man is playing golf. A little bit of color, a little bit of tone. The tree gets kind of filled in. This is actually part of the drawing, but it could just as easily be an entourage tree. And then again, some labels that have been added. Another LTL. This is hand drawing with just images of movies. This is a movie theater, and having those images, even though the whole image hasn't been treated with texture and tone, just having the right image, the right kind of photoshopped piece, really helps this read, helps us understand how it's supposed to be used. You also notice that looking at it from behind, the images are reversed. We're looking back through the screen, and then on the other side, we are looking at the screen from the front. So very careful use of those images as well. This is actually a great project. There's this bathroom with like viewing ports in the wall, and it's a way to see the movie like while you have to use the restroom. And there's the view when you're in the theater, or there's a view when you're in a video store, which is that you are watching a movie that's currently playing as a preview for a video or a DVD that will come out later. And so the video preview is actually quite a bit different from the full kind of theater preview. And this image really illustrates that really well. It's a section and a perspective at the same time. So really nice use of those things. Also just really well composed image to see this projected off of this screen onto a television with a remote control. It's a really, really kind of clever layout. Another LTL, they took a model that they built physically, they constructed a drawing from it to really communicate that section clearly, and then they added entourage and color and labels to it. This is just an incredibly effective, really beautiful sort of drawing. Another LTL, same project. Drawing, model, movies, really well done. You can also, think in terms of using them more diagrammatically. So you're not like literally trying to communicate something. You're trying to get a sense of the ideas of a project. And so this is this example, which is just this kind of tone with the white poche and the people, and just kind of trees and little habitats like sprinkled throughout. This is really just a conceptual kind of paper architecture kind of project, but it takes these ideas and kind of puts them into overdrive. I mean, this is essentially a drawing that is almost all texture and entourage and scale figures. The architecture is just kind of a substrate for that to happen. So these are lots of different examples of ways you can think about using these tools in your architecture to help you communicate. And in the next part, I'm actually going to show you how to do this using Illustrator and Photoshop. Stay tuned.